John Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he drove his pickup truck down the familiar dirt road that led to his ranch. The afternoon sun beat down on the Texas landscape, turning the world into a golden haze. He had just spent the whole day at the county cattle auction, selling off 20 head of cattle for a decent price. Not great, but decent enough to keep the ranch running for another season. He rounded the bend where the road dipped between two hills, the spot where he always caught the first glimpse of his house in the distance. The ranch had been in his family for 3 generations. His grandfather had built the main house with his own hands, and John had grown up running through the fields and learning how to work the land from his father. But today, something was different. Something was very wrong. John slammed on the brakes, sending dust billowing around his truck. He blinked hard, wondering if the heat was making him see things. A fence. A tall, silvery fence now surrounded his entire property. "What in the world?" he muttered, pressing the gas pedal again and driving closer. The fence wasn't like anything he'd ever seen before. It stood at least 12 feet tall and had a strange, metallic sheen that didn't look like any material he recognized. It curved around the entire perimeter of his 500 acres, cutting through the landscape like it had always been there. John stopped his truck near what appeared to be a gate, the only break he could see in the fence line. The gate was even stranger than the fence. It had no visible hinges or lock, just a small panel with a glowing blue screen mounted next to it. He got out of his truck, the gravel crunching under his boots as he approached the fence. Up close he could see that the surface wasn't exactly metal. It seemed to shift slightly, like water reflecting light, and it gave off a faint blue glow. John reached out to touch it, then pulled his hand back, suddenly afraid. "Hey!" he shouted, looking around for any sign of people. "Whose fence is this? Who put this here?" Only the wind answered him, rustling through the tall grass on the other side of the fence. His grass, on his land. John noticed a small, official-looking notice attached to the panel by the gate. He stepped closer to read it, his confusion turning to disbelief with each word. Notice of Property Designation, the title read. The Galactic Homeowners Association, GHA, has officially designated Earth as a developing property within Sector 8 of the Orion Spur. As per Intergalactic Bylaw 472B, all developing properties must be properly contained to prevent unmonitored expansion. John read the paragraph twice, certain it was some kind of joke. Galactic Homeowners Association? Intergalactic Bylaw? It had to be a prank, probably set up by Pete from the next county over. Pete had always been jealous of the Miller Ranch. He continued reading. This property has been identified as containing significant deposits of quantum stabilizing minerals, QSM, a critical resource for interstellar travel. For the safety of local inhabitants and to preserve the natural development of your species, this property has been secured with standard containment measures. John looked up from the notice, his heart pounding. This was too elaborate for a prank. The fence alone would have cost millions to install, and it circled his entire property. Still trying to make sense of it all, he touched the blue screen on the panel. It lit up, scanning his hand with a beam of light. Identity confirmed, John. Miller, property resident. A pleasant female voice announced from the panel. Access granted. The gate silently slid open. John hesitated, then walked through. The gate closed behind him as soon as he passed. He rushed to his house, fumbling for his phone. He called the sheriff's office first, then his neighbors, then the county commissioner. Within hours, his ranch became the center of a growing storm of confusion and fear. By sunset, local police cars lined the road outside the fence. News vans had started to arrive, and a military helicopter circled overhead. None of them could get through the gate. The panel only responded to John. "Mr. Miller, have you had any contact with whoever put up this fence?" Sheriff Gordon asked through the fence as John stood on his side, feeling increasingly trapped despite being on his own land. "No one," John replied. "Just this notice about some Galactic Homeowners Association." The sheriff exchanged glances with a man in a dark suit who had arrived an hour earlier, claiming to be from the Department of Defense. "Mr. Miller," the suit said, stepping forward. I'm Agent Lewis. We need you to stay calm and cooperate fully. This appears to be a matter of national security. National security? John laughed, the sound hollow even to his own ears. This is my ranch. My family has owned this land for 80 years. Sir, we have reason to believe you may have been contacted by... Agent Lewis paused, looking uncomfortable. Non-terrestrial entities. You mean aliens? John said, the word feeling ridiculous in his mouth. You're saying aliens put up a fence around my ranch? We're not saying anything definitive at this point, Agent Lewis replied carefully. But we need to bring in experts to examine this technology. It's unlike anything we've seen before. John spent the rest of the evening watching more officials arrive. Scientists in white coats, more men in suits, even a group from NASA. They all studied the fence from the outside, taking readings and pictures, arguing among themselves. None could get through the gate. As darkness fell, the fence began to glow more brightly, casting an eerie blue light across the landscape. The cattle in the far pasture seemed unbothered, grazing peacefully, as if nothing had changed. John sat on his porch watching the chaos unfold beyond his fence. News reporters shouted questions he couldn't hear clearly. Lights from vehicles and equipment flashed in the growing darkness. Above it all, the stars seemed especially bright tonight. This is still my ranch, he said to himself, gripping the porch railing. Fence or no fence, aliens or no aliens. He stared up at the night sky, wondering if whatever put the fence here was watching him right now. The thought should have terrified him, but instead a strange calm settled over him. His grandfather had fought droughts and storms to keep this land. His father had fought banks and developers. Now somehow John would have to fight aliens, or at least their homeowners association. He took a deep breath of the familiar Texas air and made a decision. Whatever happened next, he would protect his legacy. He would find a way to take back control of his land, even if it meant dealing with beings from beyond the stars. 2 weeks passed, and life on John Miller's ranch had settled into a strange new normal. The fence still stood, shimmering in the sunlight during the day and glowing blue at night. The outside world had not forgotten about him. A small camp of government officials, scientists, and reporters remained just beyond the fence, watching and waiting. John had grown used to the eyes on him as he went about his daily chores. He fed his cattle, fixed fences inside his property, and tended to his crops, all while pretending that the world had not gone crazy around him. The only comfort was that inside the fence, most things worked as they always had. His well still pumped water, his generators still ran, and his cattle seemed happy enough. On this particular morning, John was checking on a pregnant heifer in the east pasture when he heard a sound that made him stop in his tracks. It was a high-pitched whine that seemed to come from everywhere at once, growing louder by the second. He looked up just as the clouds parted, and a silver object dropped from the sky. It wasn't like any aircraft he had ever seen. It had no wings, no rotors, and moved with an impossible grace. The object, a pod about the size of a small car, hovered briefly over an empty field near his house, then settled onto the grass without making a sound. John's first instinct was to run for his shotgun back at the house, but curiosity kept him rooted to the spot. The side of the pod slid open and a ramp extended to the ground. A woman stepped out. She was human, at least she looked entirely human, with dark hair pulled back into a neat bun. She wore a crisp charcoal suit that seemed too formal for the Texas heat. The woman glanced around, spotted John, and began walking toward him with confident steps. John stood his ground, though his heart hammered in his chest. "Mr. John Miller?" the woman called as she approached. Her voice was pleasant, with just a hint of an accent he couldn't place. "That's me," John said. "And you are?" "Lily Vasquez," she replied, extending her hand when she reached him. "Sector 8 Compliance Representative for the Galactic Homeowners Association." John stared at her hand for a long moment before shaking it. Her grip was firm, her skin warm. She was definitely human. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. Lily smiled. "I imagine not. May we talk somewhere more comfortable? Perhaps your house?" John nodded, still too surprised to argue. He led the way back to his farmhouse, aware of the commotion her arrival was causing beyond the fence. The government people were scrambling, pointing devices at the pod and shouting, "Into phones." Inside his kitchen, John watched as Lily declined his offer of coffee but accepted a glass of water. She sipped it politely before setting it down on the table between them. "I know you have questions," she began. "That's putting it mildly," John said. "Let's start with who you really are and why there's a fence around my ranch." "I am exactly who I said I am," Lily replied. "I work for the GHA as a human representative. They find it helpful to have natives of each planet serve as intermediaries." "And how does a human end up working for aliens?" Lily smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "I was hiking in Colorado 7 years ago and stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to see. A small outpost where GHA representatives were taking mineral samples. Instead of, well, let's just say they offered me a job instead of alternatives." John didn't like the sound of that. "So they kidnapped you?" "They recruited me," Lily corrected. "And it's been fascinating work. But I'm here to talk about your situation, not mine." "The fence," John prompted. "Yes, the fence." Lily straightened in her chair. "The GHA has been monitoring Earth for centuries. Generally, they, allow humanity to develop independently. But occasionally certain resources become relevant to galactic interests. And there's something under my ranch?" "Precisely. Quantum stabilizing minerals, QSM for short. Very rare, very valuable, essential for faster-than-light travel." John leaned back in his chair, trying to process this information. "So aliens want to mine my land?" "The GHA has already begun the process," Lily explained. "The fence is the first step. It creates a controlled zone where extraction can eventually take place." "Without my permission?" John's voice rose. "This is my property." "By Earth standards, yes," Lily said calmly. "By galactic standards, resource rights extend beyond planetary property laws." John stood up, anger replacing his shock. "I want the fence removed. Now." Lily's expression turned sympathetic. "I'm afraid that's impossible. The QSM beneath your land is simply too valuable in the current galactic economy. So what happens now? You just take my ranch?" "You have options," Lily said. "The GHA is bureaucratic, but fair. You can accept a generous relocation package. Move anywhere on Earth you'd like with enough money to live very comfortably." "And the other option?" John asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like it. "You can purchase the property rights to your land under GHA terms." "Purchase my own land?" "That I already own," Lily nodded. "If you become the recognized owner under galactic law, you would have control over any mining operations." "And how much would that cost me?" John asked. 500 million galactic credits, Lily stated matter-of-factly, which converts to approximately 4 billion of your dollars, John laughed. "It was either that or curse. You can't be serious." "I am entirely serious, Mr. Miller. The value reflects the worth of the minerals beneath your feet." John paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. "You know I can't afford that. No regular person could." "I understand," Lily said, rising from her chair. "But I must inform you that the fence is actually protecting your land. There are less ethical interests in the galaxy who might not be so courteous about acquiring these minerals." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small translucent tablet about the size of a playing card. She placed it on the table. "This contains the property deed and all relevant GHA bylaws, translated into English. Review it. Consider your options. I'll return in 3 days for your decision." "And if I decide to fight this?" Lily's expression softened slightly. "The GHA is obligated to honor its own legal framework, Mr. Miller. That's the reason for all this bureaucracy. If you can find a way to work within that system, you might be surprised at what's possible." Before John could ask more questions, Lily turned and walked out of his house. He followed her outside and watched as she climbed back into her pod. The sleek vehicle rose silently into the air, hovered for a moment, then shot upward until it vanished from sight. John stood in his yard, the small tablet clutched in his hand, wondering what he could possibly do next. Beyond the fence, Government. Officials were frantically signaling for his attention, but John turned away from them and walked back to his house. He had some reading to do. John Miller stared at the small, translucent tablet on his kitchen table. For the past 24 hours, he had barely slept, barely eaten, as he tried to understand the alien legal document it contained. The GHA bylaws were written in precise, emotionless language that reminded him of Earth contracts, except these governed entire planets and star systems. "This is hopeless," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. He needed help. But who could possibly understand alien property law? The government people outside the fence, John didn't trust them. They'd been trying to get him to let them in for 2 weeks, promising protection while eyeing his land with barely hidden interest. Then John remembered Kate Sullivan. She was his neighbor, Rick Sullivan's daughter, who had moved back to the area last year after working at some big-shot law firm in Dallas. She specialized in contract law, and while this was certainly no ordinary contract, she was the smartest person John knew. He picked up his phone and dialed her number. To his surprise, she agreed to come right away. "You know they won't let you through the fence," John warned her. "Let me worry about that," Kate replied. An hour later, John watched from his porch as Kate arrived at the fence in her sensible sedan. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and the confident walk of someone who had faced down corporate lawyers in courtrooms. The government officials surrounded her immediately, but Kate simply held up what looked like legal documents of her own. After some argument, they backed away. Kate approached the gate and waved at John. He walked down to meet her. "What did you tell them?" he asked through the fence. "That I'm your attorney and that if they interfere with attorney-client privilege, I'll have their jobs," Kate said with a grin. "Now, how do I get in?" John stepped up to the control panel. "Try putting your hand on the screen." Kate did so, and to their mutual surprise, the panel lit up. "Identity confirmed. Kate Sullivan, legal counsel," the pleasant voice announced. The gate slid open. "Well, that's interesting," Kate said as she stepped through. "Apparently, your alien fence recognizes Earth legal relationships." Inside John's kitchen, Kate examined the tablet with fascination. Unlike John, she seemed to find the alien legalese fascinating rather than frustrating. "This is incredible," she said after several hours of reading. "The GHA legal system is entirely based on property rights and contractual obligations. There's no room for subjective interpretation. Everything is literal." "Does that help us?" John asked, setting a cup of coffee in front of her. "Maybe," Kate said, tapping the tablet thoughtfully. "The problem is that you can't afford to buy your property under their system, but there might be another approach." She pointed to a section of text on the tablet. "Look at this bylaw here. Any entity controlling single-point access to a designated resource zone automatically qualifies for governance rights." John stared at the words, not understanding. "What does that mean?" "It means," Kate said, her eyes lighting up, "that whoever controls the gate, the only access point to the minerals they want, has rights to govern what happens here." "But they control the gate," John said. "Do they?" Kate asked. "You're the only one who can go in and out freely. The gate recognizes you as the property resident. And more importantly, look here." She pointed to another section. "Property components can be purchased separately from the primary resource designation." Kate stood up and began pacing the kitchen, her legal mind working faster than she could explain. "John, what if instead of trying to buy the whole property, with the minerals which you can't afford, you offer to buy just the gate and access rights? Can I do that?" "According to this, yes. Components of a property can be sold separately. The gate is a component, and whoever controls the gate controls access to the minerals." John thought about this. "So I would own the gate, but not the minerals?" "Exactly. But they can't get to the minerals without coming through your gate." Kate smiled. "It's like when a big company wants to build a factory, but there's one small property in the way that controls the only road in. Suddenly that little property becomes very valuable." "How much would the gate cost?" John asked. Kate did some calculations on the tablet. "Based on their conversion rates, I estimate about 45,000 galactic credits. And that is about $250,000. John let out a low whistle. That's still most of my savings. To own the only gate to minerals worth billions? It's a bargain. Kate's eyes sparkled with excitement. We can draft a proposal tonight. When is Lily coming back? Tomorrow, John said, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. They spent the rest of the day and most of the night drafting a proposal in the formal language of the GHA bylaws. Kate was in her element, finding precise wordings and creating a document that looked much like the alien contracts on the tablet. By morning, they had a proposal ready. John Miller would purchase the gate and access rights to his property for 45,000 galactic credits, payable immediately upon acceptance. When Lily's pod descended from the clouds the next day, John and Kate were waiting in the field. Lily looked surprised to see Kate as she stepped out of the pod. I see you found counsel, Lily said, nodding to Kate. Kate Sullivan, Kate said, extending her hand. I'm representing Mr. Miller in this matter. I wasn't aware Earth attorneys had standing in GHA proceedings, Lily said with a hint of amusement. Your own system recognized me as legal counsel, Kate replied smoothly. And the bylaws make no species distinctions for representation. Lily's eyebrows rose slightly. Impressive. You've been studying our legal framework. We have a proposal, John said, handing over the document they had prepared. Lily read it quickly, her expression changing from curiosity to surprise. She read it a second time, more carefully. This is unexpected, she said finally. You're only seeking to purchase the gate and access rights, not the property or mineral rights? That's correct, Kate answered. According to Bylaw 87C, property components can be purchased separately from the resource designation. Technically true, Lily admitted, but the intent, the GHA legal system doesn't recognize intent, Kate interrupted. It recognizes only the literal text of the agreement, as stated in the Fundamental Principles section. John watched this exchange with growing hope. Lily seemed caught off guard, which he took as a good sign. I will need to consult with my superiors, Lily said finally. This is an unusual request. We understand, Kate said, but the price is fair according to the GHA's own value calculator for access components. Lily nodded slowly. I will return tomorrow with an answer. She glanced between John and Kate. You've found quite an advocate, Mr. Miller. Best lawyer in Texas, John said proudly. After Lily departed in her pod, Kate turned to John with a cautious smile. Don't celebrate yet, but I think we may have found our loophole. John looked up at the clear Texas sky where Lily's pod had vanished. For the first time since the fence appeared, he felt like he might just have a chance to keep his home, and maybe do something even bigger for humanity in the process. The next day dawned bright and clear. John was up before the sun, too nervous to sleep. He sat on his porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sky for any sign of Lily's pod. Kate arrived early, driving through the gate that now recognized her, without issue. Ready for the big moment, she asked, joining him on the porch with her own cup of coffee. As ready as I'll ever be, John replied. Do you really think they'll accept our offer? Honestly, I'm not sure. We're using their rules. In a way they probably didn't intend. But if their system is as literal as it seems, they might have to accept it. John nodded, trying to temper his hope with realism. In the distance, beyond the fence, he could see the government camp had grown overnight. Word had spread that something was happening. News vans lined the road, and he spotted several black SUVs that hadn't been there before. Everyone's waiting to see what happens, Kate observed, following his gaze. Yeah, but we're the ones with the most to lose, John said quietly. Around mid-morning, the familiar high-pitched whine filled the air. John and Kate stood up as Lily's pod appeared in the sky and gracefully descended to the same spot in the field. This time, Lily wasn't alone. As the pod's door opened, she emerged with two beings that were definitely not human. They were tall and slender with grayish-blue skin and large almond-shaped eyes. They wore simple gray uniforms without any visible rank or decoration. Well, that answers that question, Kate murmured. Real aliens. John and Kate walked out to meet the visitors. Up close, the aliens were even more unsettling, not because they looked frightening, but because they looked almost human. Yet, not quite, like someone had described humans to an artist who had never seen one. "Mr. Miller, Ms. Sullivan," Lily said formally. "May I present Directors Kale and Vren of the GHA Resource Allocation Division." The aliens nodded in unison but didn't speak or offer to shake hands. "They've reviewed your proposal," Lily continued, "and they have a response." One of the aliens, John couldn't tell which was Kale and which was Vren, handed Lily a tablet similar to the one she had given John but larger. Lily accepted it and read from the screen. "The Galactic Homeowners Association acknowledges the petition of John Miller to purchase access rights to designation Earth 42, Sector 8, Orion Spur." Lily paused, glancing at the aliens, then continued. "After review, the petition is approved." John felt his knees weaken slightly. Kate gripped his arm in excitement. "The documented price of 45,000 galactic credits will be accepted as payment in full for the gate component and associated access rights," Lily read. "Upon completion of transaction, John Miller will be recorded as the legal controller of all ingress and egress to the designated property." "They accepted?" John asked, hardly believing it. Lily looked up from the tablet. "They did. Apparently no species has ever thought to purchase just an access point before. The legal department found it quite amusing." The taller alien, Vren or Kale, spoke then in perfect English but with a strange musical quality. "Your species thinks differently. This is noted." "What happens now?" John asked. "Now we complete the transaction," Lily said. "Once payment is confirmed, you will be the legal owner of the gate. No one, not even the GHA, can enter without your permission." Kate looked pleased but cautious. "And what about mining the minerals? What are the GHA's plans now?" The second alien spoke. "We will negotiate. We must have access. You control access. This is now a trade discussion." John took a deep breath. "I need to make a call to my bank." After a tense hour of phone calls, electronic transfers, and alien verification procedures that John didn't understand, the transaction was complete. John had spent nearly all his savings, but he now owned the only gate to his property, a gate that controlled access to minerals worth billions. As they finished the process, the aliens handed John what looked like a small silver pen. "Control device," it explained briefly. "Gate responds to this now." John accepted it carefully. "Thank you." The aliens turned without another word and walked back to their pod. Lily lingered. "Congratulations, Mr. Miller," she said with what seemed like genuine respect. "You've just made history. This is the first time a developing world species has gained leverage in a resource negotiation with the GHA." "What happens next?" John asked. "The GHA will want to begin diplomatic relations to discuss mining rights. They'll need your permission to access the minerals." "And if I say no?" Lily smiled slightly. "You won't. The minerals are valuable to both our species, but now you can negotiate from a position of strength." She nodded to Kate. "With good counsel, of course." With that, Lily turned and joined the aliens in the pod. The sleek vehicle rose into the air and vanished into the clouds. As soon as the pod disappeared, the phones of both John and Kate began ringing. News of what had happened had somehow leaked. Government officials were desperately trying to reach them. "Don't answer," Kate advised. "Not yet. We need to think very carefully about our next steps." Word spread quickly. By afternoon, a convoy of official vehicles had arrived outside the fence. A man in an expensive suit stepped out of a limousine and approached the gate, flanked by security. "That's the Secretary of State," Kate said in disbelief, recognizing the man from television. "Mr. Miller," the secretary called through the fence. "We need to speak with you immediately. This is a matter of national security." John stepped forward, the alien control device in his hand. He felt a strange calm settle over him. 24 hours ago, he had been a rancher about to lose everything. Now he controlled humanity's first contact point with an advanced alien civilization. I'm happy to talk, John called back. But this is private property. I'll decide who comes through this gate. The secretary looked stunned by this ordinary rancher's defiance. Mr. Miller, you don't understand the implications. I understand perfectly, John interrupted. These aliens respect property rights above all else. They respect ownership, and right now I own the only door to what they want. Kate stepped up beside him. Any negotiations will happen on our terms, she added. Mr. Miller is willing to work with the government, but he will not be pressured or pushed aside. As the secretary and his entourage huddled in urgent conversation, John looked at the silver fence stretching around his land. The fence that had seemed like a prison 2 weeks ago had now become his greatest asset. We need someone we can trust, John said quietly to Kate. Someone who can tell us what these minerals really are. Kate nodded. I know just the person. Dr. Sam Wright, geology professor at the university. Brilliant scientist. No government ties. Call him, John said. Let's find out exactly what we're sitting on before we talk to anyone else. As the government officials waited impatiently beyond the fence, John walked back to his house, his mind spinning with possibilities. He was no longer just fighting for his ranch. He was now holding the key to humanity's future among the stars. 1 year had passed since John Miller purchased the gate to his ranch. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined, and his ranch stood at the center of it all. The simple gate had been replaced with an elegant archway made of a material that shimmered with an inner light. Carved into its surface were symbols from both human languages and the strange angular script of the Galactic Homeowners Association. John stood beside the archway, watching as a group of scientists passed through on their way to the research facility that now occupied 10 acres of his property. Some were human, dressed in white lab coats. Others were clearly not from Earth. Tall, blue-skinned beings like the directors he had met, and other species he still couldn't name. Quite a sight, isn't it? Asked Kate, walking up to join him. She wore a business suit now, her position as chief legal advisor for Earth's planetary committee keeping her busy most days. Sure is, John agreed. Sometimes I still can't believe any of this is real. Dr. Sam Wright emerged from the research building, his face lighting up when he spotted them. The geology professor had been the first person John had allowed through the gate after the government officials. Sam had confirmed the presence of the strange crystalline substance the aliens called QSM, quantum stabilizing minerals, and helped John understand exactly what was at stake. The committee meeting starts in 15 minutes, Sam reminded them as he approached. The GHA representatives are already waiting. John nodded. I'll be there. Just wanted some fresh air first. After Sam headed back to the building, John gazed out across his property. He still raised cattle on most of the land, refusing to give up the ranch that had been in his family for generations. The cattle seemed unbothered by the occasional alien, craft that now landed in the designated area near the research facility. Do you ever regret it? Kate asked. Getting caught up in all this? John thought for a moment. No, can't say that I do. My grandfather always said our family was meant to be on this land. Guess he was more right than he knew. The negotiation with the GHA had been long and complex. With Kate's help, John had leveraged his control of the gate into an agreement that benefited not just himself, but all of humanity. The GHA was granted limited mining rights to the QSM, but in exchange, Earth received access to technologies that had transformed human society almost overnight. Clean energy systems based on alien designs now powered cities around the world. Medical breakthroughs from galactic knowledge had cured several major diseases. And most significantly, the first human ships equipped with QSM-powered engines were being constructed in orbit, preparing to take humanity to the stars. All because one Texas rancher refused to be pushed around by an alien homeowners association. John glanced at his watch. A gift from the President of the United States during a ceremony at the White House 6 months ago. We should head in. As they walked toward the research facility, a sleek pod descended from the sky, Lily's pod. She had become the official GHA liaison to Earth, visiting the ranch frequently to oversee the alliance. She emerged from the pod and fell into step beside them. "Good morning, John, Kate. The trade division is quite excited about today's proposal." "They should be," Kate said. "The mineral extraction rate has exceeded projections for 3 straight months." Inside the research facility, they entered a large conference room where representatives from both Earth and the GHA waited. The planetary committee, a dozen individuals selected from nations around the world, sat on one side. The GHA delegation, consisting of 4 different alien species, sat on the other. John took his seat at the head of the table. Though he had no official title beyond Property Access Controller, everyone knew his unique position. He owned the HOA gate, which meant he could shut down the entire operation if the agreement was violated. This gave him power that neither Earth governments nor the GHA could ignore. "Let's begin," John said simply. The meeting proceeded smoothly, with discussions about mining quotas, technology transfers, and plans for the first human diplomatic mission to GHA headquarters in another star system. It was all routine now, though the idea of humans traveling to alien worlds still seemed like something from a science fiction story to John. As the meeting concluded and the participants filed out, one of the alien representatives, a tall, blue-skinned being named Kale, approached John. "Your species continues to surprise us," Kale said in that musical voice. "The legal minds at GHA headquarters are still discussing the ingenuity of your gate purchase. No other developing species has ever found such a simple solution to gain leverage." "We're resourceful," John replied with a small smile. "Indeed." Kale's large eyes studied John. "The High Council has approved the next phase of technology transfers. Your ships will soon be able to travel to neighboring star systems." "Thank you," John said. "We're looking forward to it." Kale tilted his head slightly. They did not understand what it means when someone puts a fence around a Texan's ranch. John laughed, surprised by the aliens' understanding. No, they sure didn't. After Kale departed, John walked back outside. The Texas sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. In the distance, his cattle grazed peacefully, just as they had done on this land for generations. The silvery fence still surrounded his property, but it no longer felt like a prison. Now it marked the boundary of humanity's first outpost in galactic affairs. Lily joined him, watching the sunset. "You know, when I first came here, I never imagined this outcome. The GHA expected you to take the relocation package and move on." "Never an option," John said firmly. "The higher-ups are still baffled by how a single human rancher managed to outmaneuver a system that's been in place for millennia," Lily admitted. John smiled as he looked out over his land. "My family doesn't give up easily. My grandfather fought droughts to keep this ranch. My father fought banks. I just happened to fight aliens." As darkness fell, lights came on around the research facility. In the night sky above, the stars seemed brighter now that John knew what was out there. Somewhere among those stars, other worlds were just learning about Earth, the small planet where a simple rancher had changed the rules of the game. John thought about his father and grandfather. They had protected this land so it would stay in the family. Now, because of that same stubborn determination, the Miller Ranch had become something much more important, the doorway to humanity's future. He pulled out the small silver control device that operated the gate. Such a simple thing, yet it had changed everything. All because he had found a loophole in alien bureaucracy. "Time to feed the cattle," John said, putting the device back in his pocket. Some things never changed, even when the world turned upside down, and that was exactly how John Miller wanted it.